I want to officially welcome you to the Powerful Women Conference here at the College of New Rochelle. So give yourselves all a round of applause. So as you know, today we are focusing on powerful women in finance. And we promise you all a power-packed discussion by women who have truly made it in what has clearly been, for so many years, a male-dominated area of business. My name is Elizabeth Bracken-Thompson. I am a partner in my own advertising and PR firm, Thompson & Bender, and I'm indeed honored to be here today as your moderator. Today, we're going to engage in a very candid conversation. We are going to be welcoming questions from all of you here in the audience, and we want to sort of delve into, with this incredibly distinguished panel, some key areas. First, how did they get to where they are today? What was the key ingredient that helped these three amazing women achieve what they have? And then we're also going to ask them for a little bit of their perspective and predictions in the economic world we're living in today. The College of New Rochelle, founded in 1904 as the first Catholic college for women in New York State. You know, the College of New Rochelle has an extensive network of campuses across the entire New York metro area, enrolling 4,200 students in 4 schools: Arts and Sciences, just for women, School of New Resources for adults, School of Nursing, and the Graduate School. And you know, it couldn't be successful without an amazingly powerful woman at the helm. And you know what? She actually deserves to be part of this panel today because she began her career in the world of finance at KPMG. She then became CFO here at the college, and now she is truly one of a kind, one of the most respected presidents in the college arena, and that is President Judy Huntington. Come on up, Judy.
Thank you so much, Liz. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Judy Huntington, president of the College of New Rochelle, and it's an absolute privilege to welcome you to CNR and the Powerful Women in Finance event. I'd like to also welcome and thank our moderator, Liz Bracken-Thompson, partner with Thompson & Bender, who's also a CNR School of Arts and Sciences alumna and someone who continues to make us so very proud. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, and welcome. We're thrilled to once again co-host this event in partnership with West Fair, and I'm particularly grateful to the CEO and owner of West Fair, Dee Del Bello, for supporting this event. Dee, too, is a graduate of the College of New Rochelle School of Arts and Sciences. As a CPA, having spent 15 years in the audit practice of KPMG and a fellowship at the Financial Accounting Standards Board, I'm particularly thrilled that we're covering a topic that's not only very near and dear to my heart, but incredibly timely and important to the development of women as leaders in, as Liz said, a predominantly male-dominated field. I'd like to welcome our distinguished group of panelists. Carla Harris, Vice Chairman, Wealth Management and Senior Client Advisor, Managing Director at Morgan Stanley. Carla is a treasured member of the CNR community. I had the absolute honor and privilege of giving her an honorary degree 2 years ago at Radio City Music Hall, where not only did she deliver a powerful keynote address, then she sang alongside with Wynton Marsalis down by the riverside. Spectacular and talented singer as well, a multi-talented woman of exceptional integrity. Thank you, Carla, for your genuine friendship and support of CNR. I'm also delighted to welcome Citigroup's Suni Harford, Managing Director and Regional Head Markets for North America. What we have in common, Suni, is that we share the gifts and talents of John Nicholson, Managing Director at Citigroup, who is a past trustee at CNR. He's just on sabbatical at the moment, whose father was past chairman of the Board of Trustees at the College of New Rochelle, and whose mother is a very faithful, beloved member of our chapel community. Welcome, Suni. And finally, I'm thrilled to welcome Peyton Patterson, President and CEO of Bankwell Financial Group, who has an impressive history in banking and someone I'm really looking forward to speaking with, particularly in my new role as a board member of Signature Bank, where I've become completely immersed in the vortex of banking compliance and regulation. Welcome. Since 1904, the College of New Rochelle has been educating and empowering women to be independent, confident, self-assured women of intellect, compassion, and with a commitment to service. And for more than 110 years, we've been preparing our students with an educational foundation grounded in the liberal arts to think critically, develop complex reasoning skills, and to write and communicate effectively, and to promote strong and effective leadership. C&R graduates are leaders and contributors to their families, communities, society, and the world, and embrace the value of integrity, the dignity of people, and the promotion of the common good. Now, I'm sure you're really eager, as I am, to continue with the program, so I'm going to turn this back over to Liz, and thank you, and welcome again to C&R. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Judy. You have on your chairs a detailed background on each of our panelists today, so I'm not going to go through their very long and impressive bios because we want to get to the questioning. But in preparing to introduce them today, I did discover some interesting little facts. First, looking at our panel, on your extreme left, we have Suni Harford. As you heard from Judy, she's the Managing Director and Citigroup's Regional Head of Markets for North America, and in this capacity, she oversees the North American sales, trading, and origination businesses of Citi Securities and banking franchise. And, you know, her credentials go on and on and on, including her academic career, which is so impressive, where she graduated from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. But what I found surprising about each of our panelists today, as I looked at their bios, is they're a multi-dimensional people. And the thing about Suni that's so impressive is that apparently she's extremely passionate about our veterans community and serves on many boards and gives back to the community in many ways to support them. And we're going to ask her a little bit about that. But let's welcome Suni. And right in the center, next to Suni, is Peyton Patterson. You know, she assumed the role of president and CEO of BNC Financial Group, the holding company for the Bank of New Canaan and the Bank of Fairfield, in early September of 2012. And she completely rebranded this new holding company as Bankwell Financial Group. It was really impressive when I read that during her 10 years with the bank, where she started at New Alliance as the CEO of New Alliance, she executed the largest banking IPO in U.S. history, raising more than $1.4 billion, that's $billion, and that is truly impressive. But again, an incredible academic career, and being named to many, many important roles and positions. But one of the most surprising facts I learned about you, Peyton, is actually her face appeared on a wanted poster. And we're going to ask you more about that when we do our questioning. And finally, Carla Harris, who is Vice Chairman, Global Wealth Management, Managing Director, and Senior Client Advisor at Morgan Stanley. She is responsible for increasing client connectivity and penetration to enhance revenue generation across the entire firm. Again, you know, such impressive credentials. In August of 2013, she was appointed by President Barack Obama to chair the National Women's Business Council and was recently named to Fortune magazine's list of the 50 most powerful Black executives in corporate America. But one of, again, surprising facts that makes her such a really unique individual is that she has just released her third gospel album and CD as a singer. Please welcome Carla Harris. So who knew? Who knew, and who has time for all this? You're all such busy women. But I thought maybe we'd begin by going back to the beginning And as we all know, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math has become a major initiative in our schools across the United States to really, especially with women, focus on math, science, technology, and engineering. And I thought I'd ask you all, going back to elementary school, how did you all do in math? Suni.
I actually, I love math. I don't know why, I don't know how. No one else in my family likes math, but I enjoyed it from the beginning. So in grade school, you had the 3 kids that kind of went in the other room for a while around the hall to do extra math problems or something. So always a big believer. For me, I'm a physics and math major. It was physics that caught me. I loved physics in high school, and I encouraged my daughter actually is in honors physics right now. I'm very happy about it. All my kids will take sciences because I just found a passion there. Loved it. If it was a major, having no idea what it would lead to. Certainly not banking. And because I liked that, math just came with it as a part of it.
So obviously it was part of the origins for you. How about you, Peyton?
Well, I'm not sure how I was doing in math in elementary school, but I can tell you that my economics professor at Kenyon College was telling me I wasn't doing particularly well. And probably when you get to know me, one of the things that I'm probably the most passionate about being a CEO is that the numbers. Numbers tell stories. And they don't lie, they are what they are, but it's amazing how they come alive. And so, it may have taken 23 years or 22 years to get a handle on the numbers. I'm very much focused on the math and the analytics and looking at trends as I look at the bank today. So, slow starter, but I caught up.
Absolutely. And Carla, was math your favorite subject?
Yes, math was definitely my favorite subject. And I look back, and I guess my early influence in finance was my grandmother, who was an entrepreneur extraordinaire. She ran a beer tavern. A very successful one at that. And I was so good at math that she used to always count the money every evening, and then she'd make the bank deposit the next day, and I was right there, basically at her feet. And she realized how good I was at math. So by 13, she fired her accountant and said, "You're doing the books." And I did her books from there on and filed her state sales tax and all of that. And she also was quite the businesswoman in that she was one of the people who did very well in the neighborhood. So when people needed a loan until they got paid, they'd come see Miss Emma. Right? And, they said, "Miss Emma, can I borrow 20? And she said, "Yeah, baby, no problem. You give me 40 on the way back." Right? And I started realizing, well, wait a minute, girl, that's 100% interest. She said, "How bad do you want it?" Right? So I learned very early on about that. Yeah.
Well, that's a terrific connection, because I was actually going to ask you all, in terms of upbringing, there's been a lot of studies about, the oldest child usually in a family is the one that succeeds the most. The youngest child is the one that gets the free pass. I was wondering, in terms of your makeup as a family, were you the middle child, the oldest? Where did you fit in terms of brothers and sisters? Carla, were you an only child?
Only.
Only child. So do you think that sort of had an impact on you in terms of focus and attention?
Yeah, I do subscribe to the theory that the first child or the only child tends to be sort of more of a type A personality. And I think that's because of the information transfer from parent to child. I think when you get to the second and third child, it's different because those kids have an opportunity to learn from the older child. But I do think you end up being more of a type A personality if you're the only or if you're the oldest. Yeah.
True. And Peyton, how about you?
Only child.
Wow, we're getting a real thread here, huh?
I think about that sometimes, whether that really had an impact on drive, because you do sort of learn to fend for yourself. And I was also raised by just my mother. So I had a fabulous example in someone who worked for the State Department. She traveled the world. And I guess I thought I better just keep up with all of this. So, interesting story, 6 months before my mother died, she said, and I was an executive vice president of a bank in New York, so I thought I was doing really pretty well. And she said to me, Peyton, before I pass away, I want you to know that you really should become the president of a bank someday.
Stop slacking off.
And I said, Mom, I'm really doing pretty well. Why are you putting this pressure on me? She said, because Peyton, I've been telling all of my friends for 2 years you were one. My mother passed the way, I got a call from a headhunter 30 days later to become chairman and CEO of a bank in New Haven. So to
Her
my
dream
mother.
came true
There you go.
for you. That's a marvelous story. That's really great. You know, well, now let's see if we're 3 for 3. We've got an only child, strong influence by a female in your family. Now, how about you, Suni?
Yeah, no, I'm one of 5.
Oh, wow.
I'm not the oldest, I'm fourth in line, I've got 3 older brothers, and maybe that's why you learn to fend for yourself, and that is part of it as well. No, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and dad did the corporate thing, and 9 to 5, and left, and mom did everything, but no, complete opposite.
Were you the only female in the family?
My younger sister.
So okay. Well, we always had 3 for 3 there. Now, tell me, who was the biggest inspiration to you in your life?
Me?
Yes.
My dad. My dad.
Why?
Dad used to tell my friends, parents, or whatever we talk around, he would say I was going to be president of the United States. So most kids say they're going to be, and everybody rolls their eyes. No, my dad was walking around introducing me that way. And it was a phenomenal thing with 3 older brothers, and they were all going to be lawyers, and they were going to follow dad's footsteps and do that thing. He picked me to say, no, you are going to be the person that does something. I will say that all of my brothers are lawyers, and my sister's a judge, so I was the one that the other one.
But all successful. How about you two ladies? Inspiration, mom, and
Definitely my mother.
yeah.
Yeah, biggest influence was my mother broadly in my life and my grandmother as a business person.
So then you're ready to move on to your career, and I guess the next logical question would be, did you have a mentor? You know, as women entering this world of finance, I mean, you clearly were a minority in that world. I mean, it clearly was a male-dominated world. So was there a mentor? Was there someone who helped you along in your career? Anybody?
I'll start. I don't usually have the standard answer for that. No, I didn't have a single mentor. I probably had 100 little mentors along the way, right? Because as you go through your career and different stages of that career, different points of decision, you find someone else maybe more appropriate at that time. So never short for someone to ask advice from, but no single sponsor or person that kind of walked me through my career, I don't think.
On your own, yeah. What about you, Peyton?
Yeah, I definitely had a mentor when I used to work for Chemical Bank in the city and then Chase. And he was someone that, the reason I called him my mentor is that he was constantly throwing me out of my comfort zone. I was always naturally sort of, wanted to affiliate myself with sales and people and marketing, sort of the more qualitative things. And one day he came to me, he says, Peyton, you're going first to the finance department. He must have talked to my economics professor. And then he said, from there, you're going to collections. I'm like, oh dear God. So I got, as a result, a very well-rounded career. And I think that's one of the things that sort of helped me sort of aspire to be a CEO, because I'd had the benefit of not just doing the things that I necessarily feel comfortable with, but things that round you out as a business professional.
A rounded career.
Yeah, and I would say I didn't have a mentor internally, but I certainly had someone externally. And let me just say that my definition of a mentor is a little different than popular business press. When I say mentor, I mean the person that you can tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. The person that you can really share the intimate details of your career with, that will give you tailored advice, tailored specifically to you and to your career aspirations.
Interesting.
And I believe strongly that that person does not need to be within your organization, nor do they need to look like you, but they do need to have your best interests at heart. So there was another woman in a completely different business who understood my context. So your mentor has to understand your context, who I would go to. And I, to this day, still call her my script mentor. So it wasn't necessarily she gave me advice along the way, do this job, do that job. That is a perfect mentor. That's a nirvana situation, what Peyton just described, especially if that person is internal and can lay it out for you like that. But this person, whenever I was going to have one of those kinds of conversations with the boys about what I thought I should get paid, what my value was, when I thought I should get promoted, I'd always call her and say, okay, it's time for me to have that conversation. And I'm going to say blah, 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 blah. And she'd say, And what outcome are you expecting with that conversation? Perhaps you should use these words. Even today, 26 years into it, I'll call her and say, yeah, I'm about to have the conversation. This time I'm going to lay it out. She'll say, right? And really help me tighten it up a little bit.
I love that. I love the script. How many of you, raise your hands, have a script mentor? Somebody you bounce something off and say, I'm going to say this. What do you think? I mean, that's a really critical person in your life. I find it interesting, the three of you, one had no particular mentor, you had one internally and external. Very interesting. But then here's the next question for you. And I'm always interested to hear, was there a game, I know in my career there was there a game-changing moment for you in your career that turned it all around for you, or if you look back on it, if that moment, if that opportunity had not presented itself, would you have taken a different path? Anybody? It's that old road not taken thing.
I guess I'll phrase it a little differently, Liz. What I'd say is there was a moment in time where I changed how I approached my career.
Yeah.
Which was
Interesting.
the day, and I assume everybody has one, when you don't get promoted. And on Wall Street, you have this one day where everybody gets promoted to partner, and the list comes out, and it's one of the most traumatic days of the year for anybody who thinks they're up for promotion. And the list came out, and I wasn't on it, and I was furious. I mean, I was beside myself. I'd been running the business for 2 years. I'd tripled revenue, everything, and just presumed that I would get promoted. I did also what, if I had a mentor, would have said, never get mad and then talk to your boss. But I called my boss at that moment into his office. And I was furious. I was shaking. And he says, "What? What's the matter?" I said, "I can't believe you didn't promote me." And his jaw dropped. And I mean, physically, his jaw dropped. And he looked at me. He said, "I had no idea you wanted to get promoted." Well, duh, right? But it was very telling, because you hear this. I see this now 30 years in, and work with a lot of folks, male and female, and there is a differential there. And it's true what they say. There's definitely a stereotype. It's not everybody, but women tend to expect to be noticed. And I looked at him and I said, okay, for the record, I want to be promoted, and I want to do it soon, and I want to do it next year or else, kind of thing. And sure, it was important. You learned to speak up, and it never happened. A month didn't go by. He didn't know what I was doing and what I was expecting from that moment on.
That's just incredibly excellent advice, isn't it, to take away? How about you, Peyton?
I would say the biggest defining moment in my career was when I went to New Alliance and was actually, the chairman and CEO. And I say that because I think for the first time, I knew I had the credentials and I knew I had the experience for the job, but probably on day one, nothing was clearer to me when the front of the New Haven Register said, "Out-of-towner to head bank. Greenwich woman to take the place of local New Haven Charlie Terrell."
Whoa.
I'm thinking, it just can't be. This is Peyton Patterson, I've got all these credentials and blah, blah, blah. And it was probably a year in my life where my value system and who I was being challenged by a town that was pretty close-knit, very activist, and the mayor was the best friend of the CEO who had died. And so proving myself was not about showing everybody I knew how to add math, that I was marketing driven. This was about my personal integrity. And you don't know when you're having to sort of fight for that piece of you that you take for granted and you know who you are, that you're having to prove yourself in that way and not in a professional way. It was an interesting time, and when I ended up on the wanted poster on the New Haven Green, it was a great picture.
Well, that's good.
I had pearls on, and it said, "Have you seen this woman?" And we had just decided to go public, and we were what they call a mutual, which is effectively a bank that's owned by its depositors. And this was the best moment in the mayor's life, that we were about to do something that he completely did not like. And so I had to prove to everybody that this was the right thing for the bank. It was a wonderful, happy ending, but I would say I spent about 2 years of my life looking behind me as I got out of the car to go into the bank. So
Tremendous stress. Tremendous stress.
Tremendous stress.
Wow. incredible. And how about you,
Yes,
Carla?
my aha moment, and some of you have heard me tell this story before, but it was indeed the aha moment. And it was about 5 to 6 years into my career, I had a very senior managing director say to me, you know, you're smart, you work hard, but I don't think you're tough enough for this business. And my first reaction was, what is he smoking, right? Because you can call Carla Harris a lot of things, but ain't tough ain't one of them. But then I said, wait a minute, suppose this guy's not pulling my leg, and suppose the rest of the organization thinks that I'm not tough enough for this business. And as you might imagine, the last thing that you want to be thought of as a woman on Wall Street is not tough. So after I got that feedback, I said, okay, I know what I'll do. So for the next 90 days, I decided I would walk tough, talk tough, eat tough, drink tough, use tough in my language. Because it's important that if you want to train people to think about you in a certain way, you must have consistent behavior around those 3 adjectives. And it was an aha moment because I realized that your intelligence and your work ethic has something to do with your success equation. But a very big component of your success equation is the perception that the marketplace has about you. And if that perception, those adjectives are a part of the definition of success and what they value, then that is what you must deliver. And if you can't deliver that perception, then you can work hard, but you won't maximize your success in that role. So I had a reputation of being very good at critiquing management presentations, so much so that my colleagues would often ask me to come into the room and give a CEO some feedback on a presentation before we would take a company on the road for a multi-billion-dollar IPO or multi-$100-million common stock transaction. Even when it wasn't my deal, they would ask me to come in there and do that. So after I got that feedback, and remember, you have to have that behavior and you have to use these words over and over in your environment when you're talking about yourself. So the next time someone asked me to do that, say, hey, can you come in and listen to this CEO's presentation and give him some feedback? I said, wait a minute, tell me a little bit about this CEO. Is this guy sensitive? Does he have a thin skin? You know, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings because you know I'm tough. So I kept using that language over and over and over to describe myself, and sure enough, in about 90 days it worked. I had a team of people coming to see me, and they didn't know I was behind them, and the VP was beating up the poor associate. Do you have the backup analysis? Do you have the synergy analysis? We're going to see Carla Harris, and you know she's so tough. So they will start to think about you that way, but it was aha for a couple of reasons. One, that's when I realized you must understand the adjectives that are associated with success for the seat that you are sitting in or the seat that you aspire to sit in if you want to maximize your success. The second aha about that moment was Carla Harris always thought of herself as tough. And the fact that this guy didn't see it meant that I was not bringing my authentic self to the table. Mm-hmm. Something had happened where the real Carla was not walking in the door every day. And that's when I realized on further examination that my confidence had been busted. I had a couple of mistakes. And when that happens, you start to retreat and you start to not bring your authentic self to the table. But your authentic self is at the heart of your power. So anytime you're trying to be someone that you're not, you create a competitive disadvantage for yourself, when in fact, the unique, authentic you is your competitive advantage. So there was a lot of ahas in that one instance when that guy said, you're not tough enough.
You know, it's really interesting. It's about walking the walk, you know, not just talking the talk. And also I think about communication. And rather than some people, you know, we've all had those experiences, as you said, Suni, where we're not promoted or we don't get the advancement that we want or the recognition. Instead of retreating, as you said, Carla, and hiding and being angry, you use it as an aha moment and turn it into a positive of how do I change that around and use that to move forward. Excellent advice. I think it was like worth the entire visit here today, wasn't it? With what you heard from these 3 women. I agree, but all right. Now I'm gonna flip it a little back to you for your personal lives. So I happened to read about, in preparation for today, Christine Lagarde, who's the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, and you know she's based in France, and she's just such an iconic woman who's running the International Monetary Fund. And I read about her personal life. It says she's divorced, she doesn't drink alcohol, she's a vegetarian, and when it listed what she does for fun, said she goes to the gym. So I'm just wondering, ladies, do you think that you can sort of, and I know it's an overused phrase, but as a woman, have it all? And if you don't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit insight into your personal lives, if you've been able to manage to, quote unquote, have it all. Suni.
Oh, God.
Sorry.
I suppose, as we say, it depends on your definition of it. And there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's a fallacy. Unless you believe you're a teeter-totter and every day is one of these, which I think it is. I'm happy. It's a world of compromises. My children are happy. I have 3 kids. They're still young. And I've missed a lot of birthday parties. I am the mother who shows up at the bake sale with bought goods.
We all relate.
I gave up caring about the looks I got a long time ago.
There you go.
You have to compromise. You have to pick the things that you're going to be good at. I think for the most part for me and my family and my office and my colleagues, you run a race and you get to the point where you're all work all the time and you see it starting to show up on the family side, and your teenage daughter stops talking to you every night, and you realize it's been a while, and you shift, and you switch again, and then you spend a little more time, you come home a little earlier, you actually get to see everybody before they go to bed, and you balance the whole weekend is there instead of doing your emails and whatnot, and that's how you go through life. And at the end of the day, I got 3 wonderful kids, they're balanced, I have a wonderful 23 years married, I have a great career that I love. The only thing killing me, I commute now. I moved to Connecticut. That's 3 hours a day that I lost in the mix. I'm still not figuring that one out. But you can't have it all. You just have to compromise. Figure what's most important for you and forget the rest.
Gotcha. How about you, Peyton?
Yeah, I maybe see it a little bit differently. One of the things I'm probably most proud of is that life-work balance. I've given a number of speeches on sort of being the CEO of your life, and what I mean by that to me is just like we're talking to people that are leaders in their professional career, I think we sort of all have to decide, at the end of this journey, whenever it is, what are the things that you really want to look back at and say you've accomplished? And we define as people and in charge of our lives what it is. And in my case, I'm really very, very disciplined about the time I spend at work. I tell anybody that works with me, you're not going to see me after a certain hour, and you're not going to see me before 8:30 because I'm driving my 16-year-old daughter to school. I love to socialize, but at the end of the day, I want to be home. And then I compartmentalize a part, which is my volunteer part of my life. And coincident, I think, with being here today, education is something I'm very, very passionate about. I was asked a couple of years ago under Governor Rail to form a commission to help reduce the educational gap in Connecticut. And unfortunately, in Connecticut, that achievement gap is the worst in the country. And it's not because what people normally think, because there are more wealthy kids in Connecticut that come from families that are better off. The truth of the matter is that the lower income kids in Connecticut are the least served in the entire country in terms of their outcomes. That really resonated with me because it kind of took my business acumen with my, I'm a mother and a family member, that it allowed me to sort of apply business practices. So about 20 CEOs in Connecticut, we formed a 501c3. And we do some, pretty important work on this topic in Washington as well as in the state of Connecticut. So you know what? How I divide my pizza pie, which I call my life, is something I've, decided to do, and it's very important to me. And I don't ever want to look back and say I haven't done all of that extremely well. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How about you?
And I could not agree more. And I'm probably right in the middle because I do believe you can have it all because I grew up with my mother having it all, but I do also agree that you have to define what all is for you. And I think that's where most women make the mistake and start to feel like they're not doing a good job on one thing or the other because you are comparing yourself and your life against somebody else's report card. No. It is your life, and this is real life. It ain't a dress rehearsal, right? So you have to make sure you understand what happiness looks like for you. And I do feel strongly that you must have balance, because that's the only way that I think you're going to be able to fire on all cylinders in everything that you do. Work is not always going to go well. So you have to have other things in your life, whether it's your kids, whether it's your spouse, whether it's running, whether it's your wine connoisseur. For me, it's singing, it's philanthropic activity, it's also public speaking, it's writing. You know, it's those things. You have to have some of that, I believe, in your day every day. So I define balance as those things that bring you joy. And if you have something that's bringing you joy every day, then that will fuel you through the things that might not be going well that day. So that in my mind is what balance is all about. It's going to all even out. And some days you will spend more time at work versus with your family. But if it's all important to you, then touch it. Make sure you get some of that every day and have something that you look forward to that you know is going to bring you joy and make you smile every day, no matter what it is.
Great advice that we all should follow. And now to some predictions I want to hear from you about, you know, the big picture of our economy in 2014. So, in your view, has the economy finally turned around, or do we still have a ways to go?
I'll go first again.
Well, we can start with Carla.
Carla, you go first.
I'm happy to, absolutely, I'm a bull.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Good news.
Right,
Okay.
absolutely. The economy actually has been improving since, in my opinion, since the second quarter of 2009. That's when we really started to see some evidence of improvement. However, I think because of the severity of the surprise that happened in 2008, that really is what has caused this to look and appear to be slower than, you know, what people think, or frankly what history has shown. Because other times when we have gone into a pretty deep recession, it's usually been sort of a 2-year, maybe 2-year and change turnaround. This looked like it took a longer time, especially on the employment front. And I think that was because, again, of the severity of the surprise. But if you think about what's going on right now, we have a bit of a, in my opinion, a perfect storm for a continued bull rally. You still have great corporate performance, and companies are in the process now of reporting their full year and their fourth quarter performance. And as long as those announcements exceed street expectations, you're going to see a little bit of a lift in the market there. The second thing is that you still have a record amount of cash that is sitting on corporate balance sheets right now, and a record amount of cash that is sitting in financial sponsor coffers right now. They have to put that money to work, which means that's a growth, that's a part of the growth trajectory. That means activity, which should also positively impact the market. And thirdly, you still have record low interest rates. And even if the Fed starts to raise interest rates, which everyone expects in 2014, unless it's a market move that the street does not expect, then you will continue to see activity around that. The street hates two things: uncertainty and surprise. And as long as you can have, you know, smaller amounts of both of those, then you'll see things continue to accelerate. So I'm a bull on this market. You see unemployment is starting to go down. You see we are finally starting to talk about the retraining of America, which is what we should have been talking about a couple of years ago, because frankly, a lot of the jobs that went away are not going to come back.
Right.
We're in a different technological phase right now. But now you're starting to hear more about people being retrained. So I'm very, very bullish on this market.
Oh, that's good news. How about you, Peyton?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I look at sort of where we live in the Northeast. I think the good news is that our market didn't get as negatively impacted as a lot of states and areas around the country. But the prognosis that everyone said was going to happen has happened. We are slower to come out of it. And you can see that definitely in Connecticut. You can see it in pockets of New York, that, you know, unemployment is actually higher in this area, and it's not improving as quickly. But the good news is loan demand is picking up. That's a good thing. Interest rates are low. Business confidence has started to pick up again, as well as consumer confidence. But the reality is that the GDP right now is not expected to rise more than, you know, let's say 2 to 3%. So we have a ways to go. And I think, you know, the gridlock in Washington is probably not helping things. And one of the things I'd love to see come out of all of this is that states get more empowered to do the things that are going to help us get out of this very sort of slow drip out of this recessionary period.
But overall, good news.
Yeah,
And,
oh, yeah.
And Suni, you sort of hesitated.
Sorry. No, I agree with all of those things. I think that's right. I think, though, my concern is, in fact, government, and it is Washington. And I think we have a hiatus right now because Senator Murray pulled them together and said, with Mr. Ryan, and said, we have to get along because America's finally focused on them being jerks to each other, both sides of the aisle, mind you. And I think the recession has dragged on longer because of Washington and because of a anti-business type mantra coming out of that, especially anti-banking. Banks still, and actually I would love your thought, I don't know what you're lending to, and I don't want to speak for Citi per se, but if anybody's tried to get a loan recently and you've got a score under a 750, you probably
Forget
can't
it.
get one.
Right.
And that is still very much the case in America. And I think there's uncertainty around regulation still. The capital requirements are being put on the banking industry. Basel III, as it comes out, a lot of confusion and uncertainty about where those regs are going, will handcuff the credit providers and I think recreate a shadow banking system that I think had a very significant part in the crisis that we had in 2008. So I'm a little more pessimistic. I also point out the globalization of the world, and it's very global. One of the things and it's a good thing, right? Capitals flow and opportunities move. And I don't know if you know this, the Frisbee, which forever has been made, little Frisbee, right, has been made in Asia, is now actually manufactured in the United States. The point, manufacturing is getting better, and costs are lower, and fuel and being self-sufficient in energy is all driving those type of decisions. But the idea that we'll have capital trapped and you won't be able to move production that way and whatnot because of regulations and territorialism and nationalism that's coming out of a lot of the regulatory environment, that scares me long term. And when you think about that, and then you think about a fiscal deficit such as the United States is going to still see 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, if we don't get serious about it, we will lose a battle if the walls are up in every other country. We need to have that global economy working for us. So definitely we come out of, I don't think that 2008 is definitely behind us. We're moving that way. So I'm bullish. I'm definitely bullish on the stock market this year for sure. But I worry 5 years out. I really do.
Very interesting. Now, Holly's got I know there's lots of questions out here. Holly has the microphone. Raise your hand right there on the aisle, and please introduce yourself. Stand up, please, and introduce yourself.
My name is John Freiberg. My question refers to the comment made by Ms. Carla Harris that she was not tough enough. And traditionally, women were not powerful because they were perceived as not being tough. The woman quality is the one of empathy and caring. So I personally would have preferred her to answer that she succeeded not by being tougher than men, but by besting men by being more caring and compassionate.
Well, it's interesting.
So
Do you have a question?
My question is, can any of you show what this gender quality of caring and compassion succeeded in besting men tougher?
Gotcha, thank you. Carla?
Yes, and let me say, just because I responded to his query about my toughness doesn't mean that I am not compassionate and that I'm not caring. And as your mother said, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? Yeah. And when you talk about being tough, it's not necessarily about your demeanor or your face, but it's also about making sure that you can make those, quote, tough decisions, give people advice that they might not want to hear, be able to speak truth to power. All of that is part of the definition of being tough. So you made an assumption, okay, that I didn't show these other qualities at any other point in my career, and you made the assumption that I didn't show these other qualities while I was being tough. So I just want to disavow you of that and say you should not have made that assumption.
Tough love. Tough love. Exactly. And actually, Suni has a comment. Yeah, Suni.
But it's a very fair point, and I'll just give you an anecdote that recently happened. We spent a lot of time and a lot of research and studies out about women and equality and whether it should be affirmative action and how do you get women on boards and how do you get women in senior executive positions. So we just ran a scenario with my boss the other day, and if you had, call them Billy and Susan, right? And they're both equally qualified for the job, or maybe Billy's a little more qualified. Should we give the job to Susie, right? Is Susie qualified enough? And is that how you're going to balance? A little bit about affirmative action, but not in that context. And that's fair. They can definitely both do the job. If Billy got hit by a bus tomorrow, Susie would definitely get the role. Should you give it to Susie? And where we came out of that conversation was, okay, not yes or no. It was redefine who's more qualified. And we stopped and we thought about it. We said, you know, why is Billy thought of as more qualified? He's got a stronger P&L because he's seen as more aggressive, more of a go-getter, more all of those words that in a woman typically show up as negatives in their review at the end of the year, right? We said, well, let's think about that. For this role, maybe a better communicator, maybe a consensus builder, maybe some of those qualities that Susie tends to have, let's rethink it. And we literally sat there and went, you know what? Susie's more qualified, she gets the job.
There you go.
So to your point, some of those qualities are now bubbling up at the very senior levels in executive management to think about how those qualities that are naturally female tend to make you better managers. You've seen all the Harvard studies, et cetera. So it's a great point, but to Carla's point, you kind of have to be all of those.
Right, and I think you have to make sure that you're, and we're going to move over, you have to make sure that you're being fair because, you know, I actually would take offense that you would assume that a man might not have those qualities. And he might have them and she might not have them. So you have to be careful of what you just did in terms of making a gross generalization that a woman should have these and that you should allow that to, and I see your point connecting to his, but I think we're gonna all have to be careful as we go forward and we understand the other qualities that are important to succeed, particularly as the millennials emerge. I think you're going to need another type of leadership quality than that has existed, but we all, men and women, have to be careful about ascribing those generalities to either men or women and look for the absolute.
I couldn't agree more. I agree. So another question right here, and please stand up and give us your name.
Hi, my name is Allison Williams. Addressing to Suni in the difficulty in small businesses to be able to move from one point to the next. We can't get a loan because we don't have the 760, but we still need to be we still need to be a part of the business community. We still want to be successful. So where do we fit into
Good
this
question. Very good question.
Okay, but to the wrong person.
Yeah, but
Institutional business side, so we don't make loans, but
Peyton,
can I
Peyton
come to you?
origination
Yeah,
or
absolutely. It's a fabulous question, and I see a couple of people in the audience that are big proponents of small businesses in this area. The reality is that the fastest growing part of the economy is what's called small business.
Mm-hmm.
And whether small business is defined as 1 or 2 people or 10 or 100, that is where the growth in jobs are in this country. And also in addition to that, most businesses, small businesses, are run by
women?
there we go.
And veterans.
And veterans. And so what's wrong with that picture? It's fabulous, and that opens up incredible opportunities. But for businesses to thrive, you need to be able to get loans. You need to be able to be trained on what are the pitfalls of a business. It's not good enough to say you're a great baker and these are the best cupcakes ever made. You got to be able to run the accounting. You have to have trusted advisors. You have to have people that you surround yourself with to be successful. So I am the biggest advocate of small businesses out there, and I really think our success in the future is going to, be on the backs of having those small businesses thrive in the future. And that's when this economy is going to start to turn around, when we start lending to those businesses.
And Carla.
Yeah, and let me add to that because I have had the privilege, as you've heard, of being nominated and being placed as the chair of the National Women's Business Council this past summer. And that is one of the things that the council will be focused on, specifically women entrepreneurs. And the question that you asked has been bubbling up quite a lot. So one of the things that we will be focused on, and I want you to pay attention to what we're going to put out there in 2014, is ways that you can get access to capital. Some of it will be commercial, bank capital, but we're also going to look at things like accelerators, and we're also going to look at angel communities and how to get access to those for women business owners, because you can usually get some capital to start your business, and you can get obviously VC or growth capital, but it's in the middle that you're talking about when you want to go from 100,000 to 500,000 or 500,000 to $1 million. So we're going to try to we're going to try to create a greater visibility around those sources of capital that's willing to actually help in growing those businesses.
Absolutely, and take down the barriers, because a lot of us, we're not even talking Harford with us. A lot of us started our business with a SUSA.
Yeah.
So we had that 5,000, 10,000.
That's right.
We have to,
Absolutely.
this one dress, I want to do 6 more dresses.
Absolutely.
I don't have,
Yeah, and I actually am bullish also about that opportunity, because if you think about what's going on now, part of the reason there used to be an impediment for women getting access to capital is because if you wanted to get that kind of capital, VC capital, you had to be in the club and you had to know where to go. But if you think about what's happening with crowdfunding today, and you think about what's happening with Kiva, I'm thinking to myself that perhaps that is now creating a level playing field so that it might be easier for women to access capital. The other thing I think you're seeing is that women entrepreneurs and successful women entrepreneurs are now starting to do a lot of their own investing and banding together. Think golden seeds to yourself, right? Yeah. And so I'm again very bullish about the opportunity, I think, for women business owners. But she's right about making yourself attractive and being able to sell the story. And a lot of people, I think, fall down on being able to sell the story to a prospective investor, whether it's a bank investor or an equity investor. Why me? Why would you spend that last dollar of investment with me? And you must be able to tell that story if you're actually going to try to attract capital.
Communication. And by the way, I should mention that our panelists are going to be here when the formal session ends, so you can go up and maybe have further conversation with them. And Holly, I know we have the mic out there one more time, and then I have one more question here, and then I'm sad to say we're going to have to wrap up in about 5 minutes. So may I hear the next question?
Yes, this is Ann Janiak, and I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Enterprise Development Center here in Westchester County. We're an SBA Women's Business Center, and I also have my colleague here from the state of Connecticut, Freya Pastore. So any of you who are women entrepreneurs, be sure to look up our website, go to us for assistance. We provide capital, training, counseling, the works. We're here to help women entrepreneurs.
And that's the truth. I mean, Ann does a fabulous job. She's been recognized by the Westchester County Women's Hall of Fame, and she's here to help you. So make sure you connect with Ann at the conclusion. Thank you, Ann. And I have another question here. The lady in the second row, you want to stand up, please, and tell us your name?
It must be the Ann Club. I'm Ann Godfrey, and my question is about, as I was reading this morning in the Journal about the new head of GM and how she has really had to monitor social media so that she can manage perception about the first woman head of a car company. She used the car show in Manhattan on many fronts, not just appearing there, but she really focused on social media to break into a club of the young men who go to these car shows to sort of branch out to them.
So, and by the way,
Question, social media.
social media, and by the way, the person you're referencing is Mary Barra, just named CEO of General Motors, the first woman CEO of any auto company in the history of the United States. So I turn it to our panel for that social media question.
Yeah, social media is incredibly important for any brand, right? And the Citi is one of those brands, particularly around the world. But it's as much that as it is the mobile connectivity, right? What are the stats, you guys? 40% of folks in Africa have a bank account, but 82% of them have cell phones. That's all you need for banking and for small businesses and money transfers. The costs of it. So it's the whole mobile technology. Social media is very much a part of the outreach. I'm not sure we've got it right yet. I still don't Facebook, I confess it, and I don't know how to tweet, but I'm a dinosaur, and everybody that works coming up the ranks definitely does those things. It's very much, it's all we're going to do eventually, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, you must have been in my boardroom yesterday. I was having a huge presentation on the role of social media for a regional bank. And when you think about an industry that's such a parity business, we have basically the same products, it's all about branching. How do you develop a personality in your brand? When we think of Apple or we think of certain brands, immediately there's a connotation about that. I want to be associated with that brand, like if you own an Apple, whatever. And so banks in particular need to distinguish themselves in terms of, I want to be a part of that experience, and there's probably no better way to do that today. totally apart from traditional advertising, to use social media as a way to have people talk about your brand, have it resonate with you, and then have them say something about you to somebody else. So it's a great question, and I think timely.
Very forward thinking. Carla?
I would agree.
Yeah, it's very forward thinking too. I just do want to do a shout out before I wrap up here to, I know he was here earlier, I don't know if he's still here, but a male friend of mine and banker, John Ritacco from CMS Bank, who actually, I cheated a little. He gave me a few questions. But thank you, John, for helping me formulate some of these questions. He's just such a great guy, sort of a friend and mentor to me as well. But before we wrap up, I do want to sort of give a little summation of what we've all learned here today. I have a question I want to pose, one last question, to each of our panelists, and that is this. In one word, if you had to use one word to describe the character trait that you have, that you feel was the basis of your success, what would that one word be? Why don't I start with Peyton, who's sitting in the middle?
Confidence.
Carla?
Faith-filled. Faith-filled.
Faith-filled.
Passionate.
Passionate. Excellent words. All words that we can live by, and I just want to kind of give you a global summation of things that our panel said today. First, that each of you seem to have a parent who was enriching your life, who led you, who gave something back to you and helped you achieve your goals. That mentors, whether they be script mentors or people you meet along the way, are really important to your life. That in terms of life and work, there is a balance that you need to create, and you need to personally define what that balance is and what will bring you joy in your lives. That education is a key component of making you all successful, and that if you face a defeat in your life, you turn that into a positive and leverage that defeat into something positive that you can build upon. Also, be authentic. I loved what you all, pretty much with Suni sort of on the edge, but that we're going to have a pretty strong forecast for 2014 and at least for 5 years to come. And finally, that if you really want to be a success in finance, you better be good at math. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for the great job you did.